Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Chase here at Rocky Mountain ATVMC. Thank you so much for checking in. So today I want to talk to you about the GET ECU for the KTM 500 EXC-F and the Husqvarna 501. If you own one of those bikes, this is hands down one of the best upgrades in aftermarket parts that you can put onto your bike. And I'll tell you why. Those motorcycles, they have a reputation for just not running that great from the factory. They run pretty lean, so you get deceleration pop. They can flame out pretty easily. Hard to start in certain conditions and some other things. And a lot of people will ask, well, why the heck would KTM or Husqvarna make a motorcycle that doesn't run that great right from the factory? And to be totally fair to those companies, they don't really have a choice. And here's why, is that when they're building these motorcycles and they're doing the mapping for those, they have to try and get a bike that's going to run good for all different markets across the world. And there's going to be federal regulations in all different countries. So it's really hard to get the bike to run as good as they really want it to and still meet all the requirements in order to sell those motorcycles. And unfortunately, in some situations like the 500 and the 501, you just get a bike that doesn't run as good as it could. And it's just kind of one of those things that we have to deal with. Fortunately for you, GET has this ECU. And what's nice is that it's a direct bolt-on replacement. I'll talk about install here in just a moment, but it's very simple. And this will solve those issues that I just talked about. Now, what an ECU is, if you're not very familiar with it, it's electronic control unit, and it's basically the brain of your motorcycle. Modern four-strokes these days, they have a ton of sensors all over them, and all the sensors that you have are collecting data, and they're taking those inputs, and they're sending them to the ECU. And so what happens is your ECU takes all that information, and based off of that, it will adjust your fuel, your ignition timing, and some other things based off of those inputs. And it's constantly updating and working to make sure that your bike is running optimally. And so what's nice is that what GET does is when they get a motorcycle like the 500 or the 501, they go and they put it on their dyno. And I had a good lengthy talk with Dan Truman over at GET, and he really informed me on a lot of cool information when it comes to mapping a motorcycle. And I asked him, I said, well, do you guys just take those bikes, you look at the stock maps and try and make them a little bit better? He said, no, absolutely not. What we do is we take those bikes, we put a GET ECU on there, and they start from scratch. And what they do is they go through and they just try and give the best mapping possible to make your bike run as best as they can get it to run, to maximize horsepower and performance, as well as your fuel economy as well. And so they've gone through with the 500 and the 501, and they have remapped it on their dyno, and they have given you much better mapping that's going to make those bikes run better. It's going to add horsepower and try and maximize your fuel economy. To install this, you're just going to remove your seat. Your ECU sits right there underneath. There's just a little rubber sleeve that it goes into, but you simply just unplug the stock ECU. You have these connectors right here, and the beauty is that you can't plug these in wrong. It's not like you could take one connector and plug it into the wrong wire that's on your bike already. You can't do that because they're different connectors. They look different. So if you've never done it before, if you're not too familiar with it, don't freak out. As soon as you plug this thing into your bike, that's all you have to do. And from that point forward, you've got the maps that GET has put onto this ECU that automatically go to your motorcycle when it's plugged in, and your bike will instantly run better. That's the beauty of these. And if you do have an aftermarket exhaust, that's fine. They are built to work with aftermarket exhaust as well. So that's why these are so valuable and why it's one of the best upgrades. If you want your bike to just run the best that it can, and you want to get a custom map built by GET for your motorcycle, that's what this is going to offer you. But on top of that, there's some other really cool features that I want to talk about. So first and foremost, when you buy this, it will come with this map switch right here that just goes right to your handlebar. And so you will have two maps that are preloaded onto the ECU. This is map 1. If I press this down, that is map 2. So you have two maps that GET will give you, and they're going to have one map's going to be more aggressive, one's going to be a little bit more mellow, so you can choose the map that you feel is going to be best for you. But what's nice though is that this, same thing, you're going to have your connectors. This just mounts to the handlebar. You have these connectors here. One's a female end, one's a male end. So again, with this, you can't screw that up as well. You can't install this incorrectly. And then you have another wire that is going to go from those connectors, and it's going to plug directly into the ECU. So it's very simple to get this installed or get your map switch installed. But what's nice about this though is that also in the box, you're going to have your map switch, but you also have their Wi-Fi comm box right here. And a lot of people are probably familiar with Yamaha and their Power Tuner app. So the Yamahas now will have a Wi-Fi box that's already installed on the motorcycle, and it gives you the ability to download the Power Tuner app from Yamaha. And then as a consumer, you can actually go in and kind of customize and make your own maps for your motorcycle along with some other cool features. So GET is giving you that same functionality with this setup. So you take this Wi-Fi comm box. Now, as far as the install with this, again, it's simple. It's just going to plug directly into the ECU. But this one, you're going to have to be a little bit more creative. Most riders are probably going to just put this inside the air box. You could put some epoxy here on the bottom side, put that in the air box in a place where it's out of the way, just let it dry. You could use Velcro. So you figure out how you want to get this mounted up. But once you have that mounted and you turn on your bike, you'll notice that there's actually 2 LEDs right here on the front. When those both light up, that lets you know that you have a Wi-Fi signal coming from this box. And then you download the app from GET, which is free. You download that app, and then you just go and you connect to this box via Wi-Fi on your smartphone, and that will give you access to create and make your own custom maps on the ECU. And then you just send those maps from your phone. Once you've created those, you will just send those to the Wi-Fi comm box, which then sends it to the ECU, and then your bike will run according to the map that you just created for it. So it gives you that functionality and some other cool features that you can go in there and customize. I won't get into all of that because there's a lot of cool things that you can do. But once you have this installed, take some time to get familiar with that app, learn how to use it, because like I said, there's just a lot of cool functionality in there. So you got the ECU, your switch, and your handlebar switch. Now here's another cool feature. This will not come included, but you can buy this also with your ECU, and this is the GET GPA or GET Power Assist controller. And this, you can see the way it mounts. Again, you would find the best mounting location for this, but you have a little hole right here. So most riders are going to take an existing bolt that they have on their motorcycle, take that out, and then use that bolt to mount this up. Again, plugs directly into the ECU. And what's cool is that this gives you 10 different levels of GPA, which stands for GET Power Assist. Now, I don't want to say traction control because it's not a true traction control. Again, that's coming from Dan Truman over at GET. But the way it works is pretty simple. And the reason that you would want this accessory to go along with this is that if you maybe do or ride in a lot of different conditions, if you are doing some dual sport riding or enduro riding, and you're in wet, slippery conditions or it's muddy out, and you're trying to optimize traction, well, when you have this on 0, that is no power assist, and then 1 is the most mild, all the way up to 10, which is going to give you the most assistance. And really, in a nutshell, the way it works is that when you turn that dial, it has you have all those sensors that I mentioned on your bike, and it senses or it tracks your RPMs and your throttle response. So, let's say you're at quarter throttle and you get a spike in RPM because your wheel is spinning because it's slippery. Well, what it does is the GET ECU will go through and actually can retard the timing, and it will just modify and change things on the fly to get the power to the ground and help prevent as much wheel spin as possible. And you can go through and change that according to how much assistance you want. So in super slippery conditions, maybe you're on a dry, hard packed road that's really slick on top, a lot of sand and gravel on top, and you don't want to get any wheel spin if possible, then you can crank that thing up to 10 and get the most power assistance or the most assistance from GET. So again, it's a really cool accessory to have. Just gives you a lot more tunability and adjustability to get the bike to run exactly how you want it to. And one thing I did forget to mention that I do want to talk about. When it comes to this switch for the handlebar, what is nice though is we get it. A lot of bikes now, your handlebars, they've got a lot of items on there. You've already got so many buttons and switches coming on bikes already. If you find yourself, you were like, you know what, I just don't have room for this switch on my handlebars. What's nice is that you don't have to use this. If you want to take it off, and if you don't have this handlebar switch installed, what will happen is that will automatically default to map 1 on the ECU. So you still get all the benefits of the ECU that I'd mentioned. You're just not going to have the ability to go between maps 1 and map 2, which you can do while you're riding, by the way. So again, if you don't want to run the handlebar switch, because you don't have room, or maybe you're just afraid you might crash, you don't want to break it for whatever reason, then you don't have to have it on there. You can still rock this. It's just going to default to map 1. But overall, like I said, with this ECU, it's one of the best upgrades you can make for the 500 or the 501 for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. If you're tired of your bike just not running as good as you want it to, if you're getting that lean pop, it's just flaming out, if it's running hot, all those things can be fixed by just getting this GET ECU. Now, questions, comments, leave those down below because we want to get those answered. To grab one for your bike, it is simple. Click on the link or head over to RockyMountainATVMC.com. Now, they are bike specific, so just make sure enter the year, make, and model when you're picking yours up to ensure that you're getting the right ECU for your bike, because otherwise, it's not going to plug in and it's not going to have the correct maps on there for your bike. As always, we ship for free over $75. If you want to stay up to date on videos like this, please subscribe to the Rocky Mountain YouTube channel. Smash that notification bell. That way you always stay up to date on the latest and greatest products. I'm Chase, and we'll see you on the trails.